Hey y'all, Scott Horton here for The Future of Freedom, the journal of the Future Freedom Foundation. Every month, Plumline individualist editor Sheldon Richmond brings you important news and opinions on policy by heroic FFF President Jacob Hornberger, hard-hitting journalist columnist James Bovard, and others from the best of the libertarian movement. The Future of Freedom tackles the most important issues facing our country, from the bankrupt and insane welfare and regulatory states to foreign wars and empire, the dismal state of our economy, and ongoing assaults on civil liberties. This society needs peace and freedom for prosperity to prevail. Subscribe to the Future of Freedom in print for just $25 a year or online for $15 a year at fff.org/subscribe. And hurry up, because this summer they'll be running my articles about the wars in Libya, Syria, and Somalia in the Future of Freedom too. That's fff.org/subscribe for the Future of Freedom. And tell them Scott sent you. All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. I'm Scott Horton. This is the Scott Horton Show. You can find my full interview archive at scotthorton.org. More than 2,800 interviews now going back to 2003. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at /Scott Horton Show. And our next guest is Conn Hallinan from Foreign Policy in Focus. That's FPIF.org. FPIF.org. And they got a great stable of writers over there, by the way. You know, John Pfeffer and all those guys. A ton of great writers over there. Conn Hallinan is one of the best of them, and his recent piece republished at antiwar.com. I lost it in my pile of tabs here, but somewhere it's about the eventual withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan. Welcome back to the show, Conn. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Scott. How about you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you joining us today. So let's see. Yes, Afghanistan, is it really the end game? Is it really the end game?
Well, that's really the question the column was asking. In theory, what you have, most of the public thinks, and the media, thinks that sometime at the end of 2014, that American and North Atlantic Treaty Organization troops are going to be withdrawn from Afghanistan. Now, there are actually very few NATO troops left in Afghanistan at this point, though a lot of American troops. But there is a treaty that will, at least in theory, keep U.S. Special Forces and trainers and also aircraft and CIA, etc., in 9 bases scattered throughout Afghanistan. So we're really not kind of withdrawing. The focus of the column, however, was the fact that here we are drawing to some kind of conclusion. There are no negotiations going on. We're not talking to anybody.
Well, in other words, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is the policy is acting as though they've won their stalemate that they were trying to achieve, but they haven't done that, and they don't have any agreement with the Taliban to let them behave as though they have won that.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what's happened. You've got this completely odd situation where the surge went in 2009, and the idea behind the surge was supposed to sort of force the Taliban to recognize that they couldn't have a military victory and to stabilize the provinces in the southern part of Afghanistan, specifically Kandahar and a couple of the provinces, Helmand province, a few of the other provinces in the south. Now, the surge didn't work. Those particular provinces right now are unstable. With the troops are basically under siege. The poppy crop has exploded, so they're full back into the drug trade at this point. And what's happened is that what the surge really did was that rather than suppress the Taliban in the south, it simply spread the insurgency to other parts of the country that were formerly much more stable, that is, the north and the west. So now you've got full-scale insurgencies going on in the north and the west. You've got these unstable provinces in the south. And the Taliban is not in the slightest bit weakened, except, of course, that they're not talking to us. So absolutely nobody knows what's going to happen. The former French ambassador, who just left a couple of months ago, held a press conference about it, and he said, "This is insane. We've got this situation where, in theory, we're supposed to be withdrawing, and nothing is happening." And that, I think, is a major concern, certainly for Americans. We have spent a huge amount of money in Afghanistan. We're going to continue to spend a lot of money. We haven't even really seen the bills come home, because much of the money the long-term money costs here are going to be on treating a lot of these veterans of Afghanistan, also Iraq. And at this point, we figured that the final bill between Iraq and Afghanistan is going to be $6 trillion. I think you figure that the national budget of the United States is a little over $1 trillion. We're talking big bucks here, and there's just no effort by the administration to step up the game and start to sit down and talk to people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and here's the thing, dude. You can't talk at this point, especially the Democrats, because of the way politics work and everything in D.C., they can't sit down really and negotiate with the Taliban any more than they could sit down and negotiate with Zawahiri at this point. These guys are Hitler and blah, blah, blah like that. And so politically, that was what the surge was all about in the first place, was just politics, right? Just putting off the eventual defeat until sometime after, the Rubio administration takes power or something.
Yeah. Cross yourself on that one. Part of it, of course, is that as a whole, the Americans tend to look at the world through these very odd prism. If everybody who opposes us is evil, and that's the term that is used. I mean, they use the term evil, even though that's really a religious term. They're evil, and so we can't. One of the reasons that the administration says, well, in Afghanistan, we can't talk to the Haqqani. Now, Haqqani are a large tribe that sprawls sort of between Afghanistan and Pakistan, because most of the tribes in what they call the Northwest Frontier and the tribal areas of Afghanistan, they don't recognize that border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. That was a border that was arbitrarily drawn in 1893 by Sir Mortimer Durand, who at that time was the leading colonial officer in India. And actually, the Afghan government doesn't accept that line. Only the Pakistan government does. So you have this tribe, the Haqqanis, and they're sort of on both sides of the border. And we're not going to talk to them because they're terrorists. Well, they're the most effective fighting force that the Taliban has.
Well, and you say in there
you're not going to talk to the people who are the most effective fighting force. Who are you going to talk to?
Right, and they have no problem working with Hekmatyar, which I can't keep track of this. I didn't realize Hekmatyar was actually part of the government coalition at this point.
Yes,
is that right?
He's a big part of it. As a matter of fact, he's one of the key elements in the current thing. Man. And they were the people who just set off that big suicide bombs.
Okay, now wait. Hold that, because there's a whole lot of explanation that I need to let you get to about that suicide bombing and the aftermath of it and everything else. But this guy, Hekmatyar, was the guy who laughed and bragged about how he took a bunch of cash from the Americans and then turned around and helped Osama bin Laden escape to Pakistan. And said, ha ha, you guys are suckers. You guys do whatever I tell you, and just laughed about it in our faces. And now, American soldiers are over there getting their legs blown off for this guy. But we're way too good to talk to Mullah Omar or Haqqani. Exactly,
this kind of demonization, it's across the board. I mean, we won't talk to Assad in Syria. For a long time, we wouldn't talk to the National Liberation Front or the North Vietnamese. There is this idea that You talk to people who what do you agree with?
Right.
That you're not fighting? Those are normally what they call lunches.
Okay, now what is this group, Hekmatyar's group, that set off this suicide bomb? And why the hell is he bombing his own capital city if he's part of the government?
Well, that's a very good question, Scott. The reason why the Hekmatyar's group say they launched the bomb, was because they found out about the treaty between the Karzai government and the United States that will keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan until 2024. However, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because, in fact, they're part of the government. They certainly knew this treaty was being negotiated. So I'm very doubtful that that's the reason they set off these suicide bombs. I think what it is that a number of groups in Afghanistan are looking at that 2014 and they're saying, okay, there's an end game here. We want to be at the table. What better way to be at the table than to set off a massive suicide bomb at the same time as you're still part of the government, just to remind everybody we're here and we need to be included in the final negotiations. And I think that probably was the major reason behind the suicide bombing, because I can't believe that Haqqani's group didn't know that this treaty was being negotiated. It wasn't even a secret. I mean, they've been talking about it in the press for the last year and a half. So, but here he is. He's our ally. We're allies of the Karzai government. He's one of the Karzai's major allies outside of the Northern Alliance people, and they're setting off suicide bombs in Kabul. If you want to talk about a dysfunctional war, Afghanistan is the very definition of a dysfunctional war. And it certainly isn't a surprise. It's not like a lot of people here in this country, everywhere in the world said, it's a really bad idea to invade Afghanistan. And they went and did it anyhow.
Yeah. Some of us knew back and said so back in 2001.
Absolutely. But of course, they have gotten something which is important. I mean, one way to look at it is you say, gee, the Americans are crazy. But the fact is that they now have a powerful military presence in an absolutely key strategic area in Central and South Asia. I mean, they're right on the Iran border. They're right on the Russian border. They're right on the Chinese border. Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, etc. They're right near Pakistan. I mean, there's a reason why all those conquerors tried to conquer Afghanistan, and that is because it is the crossroads to South Asia, to the Middle East, to the Caspian, and to East Asia. So the United States has a formidable military presence now, and at least plans to keep it up until 2024.
Well, but if any of this is on purpose, it seems to be only to disrupt any trade from going through there, because they sure as hell are providing security for free trade.
And to control it. I mean, what they don't want is they don't want those Afghan minerals going to China and to Russia. They want to keep the pressure on the Iranians, and they want to be in a position to influence what happens to Iranian oil and gas, specifically a pipeline that would run from Iran through Pakistan to India. And originally, before the war started, the Bush administration was talking to the Afghan government about running a gas pipeline from Kazakhstan, from the natural gas fields in Kazakhstan, through southern Afghanistan to India. And that was an effort to bypass the kind of control that Russians have of much of the Caspian oil and gas. And so, the old joke, is this all about oil? No, it's not all about oil. Some of it's about natural gas. I mean, that still is a very strong element there. And what I find interesting is that people avoid that, or when you say it, they say, "Oh, that's."
Well, see, the problem is it's such shorthand. It makes it sound like, oh, the policy is Americans having artificially cheap fuel. But that's not what it is at all.
No.
This is all about military strategy, about denying, or at least having the ability to deny fuel resources in a crisis, in the event of a war with China, to be able to cut them off. That kind of thing. This has nothing to do with making us all fat and rich and happy.
No,
and so when people hear that, they think that's what you mean, and they go, yeah, right, because I'm paying $4 a gallon, pal. Don't tell me I'm saving money on this,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a strategic move. It's a worldwide strategic move, and you cannot separate what's going on right now in Afghanistan from the what they call the Asia pivot by the Obama administration, because a lot of this has to do with the politics of Pakistan, China, and India. And that's a very relevant element in this Asia pivot, this move to essentially challenge China. And it's not just challenging China in the East Pacific, that is, in the Western Pacific. So it's not just, Japan and the islands and South Korea, etc. It's also South Asia and it's Central Asia, because one of the things the Chinese are doing is that they're trying to figure out how to move a lot of their oil and gas by pipeline, because they move 80% of it now by sea, and that oil and gas goes through choke points that are controlled by either the 5th U.S. fleet or the 7th U.S. fleet. And the Chinese are very nervous about that, and I think that they have a certain basis to be so.
Oh, yeah, now that I think about it, there's some more mujahideen that the West supports. I don't know all along still or what, but the Uyghurs in Afghanistan, when they're going through an Afghan camp, that ain't too bad.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is,
They're like Chechens. They're all right for mujahideen.
Sure. And the thing about it is of course, the Uyghurs and the groups of people in Western China, they have absolutely legitimate grievances. There is a way in which the Chinese are perfectly capable of looking imperial when they put their mind to it, and a lot of the stuff that's going on, particularly in the South China Seas, relationship to Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, etc., is the Chinese, throwing their weight around. On the other hand, what's going on right now around between Japan and China is really not the Chinese picking a fight. This is the Japanese picking a fight. And from the Chinese point of view, they think that the Japanese are doing it because the U.S. is egging them on. It's not entirely accurate. But it certainly is a very dangerous situation. I mean, as bad as the situation is in Afghanistan, if you were to ask me, what are the most dangerous areas in the world right now, I would say the single most dangerous area right now is the East China Sea. I mean, that's a dangerous area of the world, and I don't think people are paying a lot of attention to it, and I think that's a very bad idea. I know it's a long way from Afghanistan, but it's all linked. All of this stuff is sort of either linked by pipelines or linked by politics.
Yeah, sure. Well, and as we can see in Syria and whatever, the fighting Al-Qaeda-ish warriors all over the world is simply the cover story for all these great power politics, just like always. Whether it's the Wolfowitz doctrine or the Hillary Clinton smart power one, it's basically the same goals in mind, and the same means, for that matter.
And
a lot
if you
of
look particularly at the sudden appearance of terrorism in the Sahara, there is this suddenly, they're talking about Al-Qaeda taking over the Sahara, and there's a situation in Mali, and situation in Nigeria, and situation in Somalia. Terrorism was never a problem in the Sahara, And the situation in Mali really wasn't the result of al-Qaeda. What it was a result of is something all of us said, which was if you overthrow the Gaddafi government, there's going to be a flood of arms all over Africa. And a lot of people are going to take advantage of those arms, and that's exactly what's happening. So I think that the key thing that you said about looking, seeing Mujahideen and then using that as a way to step in, the most obvious example and the most current example right now is the growing U.S. military presence on the African continent, the formation of AFRICOM, the fact that they're setting up a drone base in Niger, that they're involved in Mali, that they're involved in Zimbabwe, that they're actively involved in Somalia. These are suddenly the U.S. Is in the African continent in a way that it wasn't, before.
All right, now let me stop you for a second. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Conn, but I have to because you said my word of the week, which is Somalia, which when you say Somalia, I say page 222 of Scahill's new book, Dirty Wars, Jeremy Scahill, the great intrepid reporter, page 222. And I'm sorry to go off on this diversion, but God, this just gets at me. I have to say it. The whole thing where Condoleezza Rice cried uncle and went ahead and let Sheikh Sharif be the president after all, as long as he would abandon the form of the ICU and take on the form of the U.S. UN-created transitional federal government, that was the plan all along, was to keep Sheikh Sharif. But just go ahead and have a gigantic war and kill 250,000 civilians for nothing and then keep Sheikh Sharif anyway.
Yeah.
All along, that was their plan to keep him. And
Absolutely.
So, wow, boy, should some Republicans be in the dock. My God, man.
Well, we are 100% responsible for what's happening in Somalia because the Islamic court government was overthrown. And at the time it was overthrown, the Shabab was just a very small marginal group within that. That's what allowed them to take over. And we did it. I mean, we overthrew the Islamic court government. I mean, we basically not only supported, we actively aided the Ethiopian invasion. We used special forces to hit certain targets. We actually shelled and attacked the coast in the southern part of Somalia.
Well, in fact, your colleague at Foreign Policy in Focus, Rob Prince, there at FPIF.org, he covered how it's in the WikiLeaks that the Bush administration made Meles Zenawi do it. I think he objected originally, and they twisted his arm and made him do the war. He was the dictator of Ethiopia.
Virtually, as far as I'm concerned, Rob Prince knows more about North Africa than God. He's absolutely amazing. He spent several years there in the Peace Corps in Tunisia, and he is a guy who has just kept up on everything that's going on: Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Libya, etc., and also, of course, the Mali situation. And the Horn of Africa. I mean, this is to me, this is very distressing because every time the United States does this, every time they move in, with their military into an area, bad things are going to happen. And I'm very concerned that bad things are going to happen in places like Nigeria and Mali and Niger and
well, they keep talking about Congo too.
Yes, absolutely.
Which, I came to find out late that was a war that was all America's fault, too. In fact, I had been citing it as the only war I could think of that wasn't all America's fault, and then I read some journalism and interviewed some experts and realized that, no, every war in the world right now is America's fault, including the Congo.
Well, certainly we play a role in all of them. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And again, what you have is that you really have to think of Pepe Escobar, who's a Brazilian.
Good friend of the show,
Yeah, he's wonderful. I love Pepe, and he's got this. He had this book called Pipelandistan, and what he does is that he looks at the entire world in terms of not where borders are, but where natural gas and oil pipelines run, and then what you can tell on the basis of the politics and the history based on following these pipelines. I mean, it's an enormously interesting and creative way of looking at the world. And disturbingly, much of it turns out to be absolutely accurate. So, you know, I think that what you see here is the United States is pursuing its interests, and as you point out, its interests are not what its citizens pay for oil. Its interests are, does it control energy supplies?
Right.
And
for
that's the key
purposes,
thing.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, now here's the thing too. We got what's the only like 2 or 3 minutes left here, but I want to go back to Afghanistan real quick and ask you about how many guys are they planning on leaving Army and Mercs behind, and is it enough to even provide force protection for their own existence there? And if they're not really still occupying the country and doing Delta Force raids and securing, clearing, holding, and building towns and whatever crap, then what's the point of staying till 2024 other than setting guys up to die in a gigantic Rout of Saigon moment?
Well, we don't know how many people that they're planning to leave. They haven't made that decision, and that has gone all the way, the figures have gone all the way from about 8,000 to about 20,000. I tend to think it's probably going to be in the range around 12,000. That, however, is military personnel. Now, we don't know what they're going to do with the CIA stuff, so that will be a separate kind of thing. You know, what are they there for? They're basically there to make sure that the Karzai government or the whoever takes over from Karzai, you know, continues. Is it enough to do anything? No, it's enough to get a lot of people killed. It's enough to get a lot of people angered at us, but it's not enough to do anything militarily.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, if it's going to be like the Beirut bombing only times 100 or whatever, where our guys basically just set up to die, like a Benghazi only multiplied, right?
Right. We couldn't conquer Afghanistan with 150,000 American troops. So we're going to do it with 12 or 10? I mean, obviously that's not what it's there for. I think my own feeling is that they want to maintain a military footprint in Afghanistan because it's still one of the most strategic areas in the world. And I think they actually would like some kind of peace agreement. I don't think they're capable of doing it because of all these restrictions they put on who they talk to and everything. But they want to keep a military presence in Afghanistan. And do I think it's going to work in the long run? No, because I think you're going to get a lot of pressure from a lot of other countries in the region. This is not going to make the Iranians happy. It's not going to make the Russians happy. It's not going to make the Chinese happy. It's not going to make the Pakistanis happy. All of those countries have an ability to destabilize Afghanistan. So what the U.S. really needs to do is it needs to pull all of the combatants together, all of them. Not we'll talk to you and we won't talk to you. And they need to pull together all of the actors in the region. I mean, Pakistan, India, Iran, the Russians, China, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. They need to pull all of those people together, sit them down, and say, okay, how do we work out something? How do we cut a deal here? The Afghans are always willing to cut a deal. I mean, the Afghans have this reputation of being incredibly warlike. They can be very tough, but actually they love to deal a whole lot better. So it is possible to do it. But it is not possible to do it if you take the attitude of A, we're only going to talk to people we want to talk to, and B, the reason why we're there is in our own interests and to follow our own strategic goals.
Right.
Not going to work.
I'm sorry, we got to leave it right there. We're done. We're all out of time for the week. That's it. Conn Hallinan, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Everybody, that's Conn Hallinan from FPIF.org, Foreign Policy in Focus. Thanks for listening. No KPFK show tonight because of fundraising time, but see you next week.
Hey everybody, Scott Horton here. Ever think maybe your group should hire me to give a speech? Well, maybe you should. I've got a few good ones to choose from, including how to end the war on terror, the case against war with Iran, central banking in war, Uncle Sam and the Arab Spring, the ongoing war on civil liberties, and of course, why everything in the world is Woodrow Wilson's fault. But I'm happy to talk about just about anything else you've ever heard me cover on the show as well. So check out youtube.com/Scott Horton Show for some examples, and email scott@scotthorton.org for more details. See you there. Hey y'all, Scott Horton here for WallStreetWindow.com. Mike Swanson is a successful former hedge fund manager whose site is unique on the web. Subscribers are allowed a window into Mike's very real main account and receive announcements and explanations for all his market moves. The Federal Reserve has been inflating the money supply to finance the bank bailouts and terror war overseas. So Mike's betting on commodities, mining stocks, European markets, and other hedges against a depreciating dollar. Play along on paper or with real money, and then be your own judge of Mike's investment strategies. See what happens at WallStreetWindow.com. Over at AIPAC, the leaders of the Israel lobby in Washington, D.C., they're constantly proclaiming unrivaled influence on Capitol Hill, and they should be proud. The NRA and AARP's efforts make them look like puppy dogs in comparison to the campaigns of intimidation regularly run by the neoconservatives and Israel firsters against their political enemies. But the Israel lobby does not remain unopposed. At the Council for the National Interest, they put America first, insisting on an end to the empire's unjustified support for Israel's aggression against its neighbors and those whose land it occupies, and pushing back against the lobby's determined campaign in favor of U.S. attacks against Israel's enemies. CNI also does groundbreaking work on the trouble with evangelical Christian Zionism and neocon-engineered Islamophobia and drumming up support for this costly and counterproductive policy. Please help support the efforts of the Council for the National Interest to create a peaceful, pro-American foreign policy. Just go to councilforthenationalinterest.org and click Donate under About Us at the top of the page. And thanks. Admit it, our public debate has been reduced to reading each other's bumper stickers. Scott Horton here for LibertyStickers.com. I made up most of them, and most of those when I was mad as hell about something. So if you hate war, empire, central banking, cops, Republicans, Democrats, gun grabbers, and status of all stripes, go to LibertyStickers.com, and there's a good chance you'll find just what you need for the back of your truck. Own a bookstore? Sell guns at the show? Get the wholesaler's deal. Buy any 100 stickers and they drop down in price to $1 a piece. You can spread the contempt and make a little money too. That's LibertyStickers.com. Everyone else's stickers suck. Oh man, I'm late. Sure hope I can make my flight.
Stand there.
Me? I am standing here.
Come here.
Okay.
Hands up, turn around.
Whoa, easy.
Into the scanner. Ooh, what's this in your pants?
Hey, slow down. It's just my...
Hold it right there. Your wallet has tripped the metal detector. What's this? The Bill of Rights?
That's right. It's just a harmless stainless steel business card-sized copy of the Bill of Rights from SecurityEdition.com. There for exposing the TSA as a bunch of liberty-destroying goons who've never protected anyone from anything. Sir, now give me back my wallet and get out of my way. Got a plane to catch.
Have a nice day.
Play a leading role in the security theater with the Bill of Rights Security Edition from SecurityEdition.com. It's the size of a business card, so it fits right in your wallet, and it's guaranteed to trip the metal detectors wherever the police state goes. That's SecurityEdition.com. And don't forget their great Fourth Amendment socks.
Hey guys, I got his laptop.